Hello, my name is Tony and this is Lawman. The great American film critic Pauline Kael once said, well, at least it was something like this. This is an approximation as I'm paraphrasing and summarizing. She once said, or rather wrote, there are great westerns, there are good westerns, and then there are westerns. Yeah, I know, the way I put it sounds a bit cryptic, but the upshot was that in her opinion there were no bad westerns. Fair to say, she was a western movie fan, but I have to disagree with her, because I've seen Heaven's Gate, and not only is that a disgracefully bad film in every sense of the word bad, except for the one where bad means something good, it is also an irredeemably bad western. I mean, imagine if you can, a piece of cinema so awful in the history of the movies up to that point that it redefined the word catastrophic. A film that got everything that has ever been learned about the art of filmmaking so completely and utterly wrong that it came over as the maker's deliberate intention to insult and piss over the audience. New York Times critic Vincent Canby likened it to a forced 4-hour walk-in tour of one's own living room. No, Mr. Canby, you are being way too kind. It was nowhere near that fucking dynamic and engaging. Unqualified disaster, you say? Fair enough. Over time, with various re-released recuts and re-edits, some critics have reappraised this utter travesty and revised their opinions, and for some unknown reason tried to convince the rest of the world that it actually has some merit. It doesn't. Unless you count as valid improvements a mercifully shorter running time or enhanced audio reproduction so you can actually hear the atrocious doggerel the actors are crunching and grunting.
What one loves about life are the things that fade.
What I'd love about life is if this thing faded out of existence completely.
The definitive final cut, restored and back on the big screen.
You bastards, why? For what possible reason? To demonstrate that coronavirus isn't that bad after all? You should be fucking ashamed. Silk purse, pig's ear. Or pig's ear, silk purse. There is nothing you can do to improve this film that doesn't involve a can of kerosene and a box of matches. All anyone needs to know is it's a bad film, a bad western, and it killed both United Artists and the western movie genre almost stone cold dead. Okay, let's shovel some more dirt onto its coffin lid. It was a box office bomb of almost unimaginable proportions to boot. Now, in common with Pauline Kael, I like westerns, and Lawman is a western, and one I saw at the Market Hall Cinema back in 1972 or thereabouts. Unlike Heaven's Gate, it's a classic genre piece, and it's damn good. I will concede that it doesn't have much of a positive reputation with professional critics, but then I'm not one of those. I am the audience, the paying moviegoer, the person who watches, who expects to be entertained. Everything else can go fucking hang. I don't need it for intellectual validation, or to pay the bills, or make me seem like I'm a super clever smartass and know exactly what I'm talking about. Neither do I need other viewers to share my opinions, to agree with me, to see what I see. I can tell you why I like it and why it resonates positively with me, and that's just what I'm going to do. First though, let me introduce you to Mr. Michael Winner. Michael Winner was a British film director, producer, writer with an eye for turning out unashamedly populist entertainment in the 60s and 70s. By all accounts, he was a bit of an egotist and made the films he wanted to make in the way he wanted to make them. He did it his way, folks. Nothing wrong with that. By the late 70s, his output had become patchier, more sporadic, and he seemed to lose his filmmaking focus and flair. He sidelined movie making in favour of being a celebrity chat show guest.
We have the technology, we can do it, but does it mean that we should necessarily do things that we can?
Well, I'm quite appalled and very nearly walked out to be on a British television programme where lesbians are wheeled in for you to make smutty and offensive remarks to. I think it is an absolutely shameful exhibition of vulgarity directed toward a minority. I think the lesbians have come over with considerable dignity and you've come over as an arsehole.
It's very sweet of you.
Food critic and butt of jokes and derision by the media elite and the odd stand-up comedian. The very odd stand-up comedian.
Take my wife, please. No. A friend of mine, Willie Eckers, asked me the other day, he said, "Hey, Jimmy Nazi, what's worse than living with your wife?" And I said, well, I once sat through an entire Michael Winner film. You like it? You like it? You do, don't you?
I don't think Winner really cared much what others said, did or thought. He wrote a book after losing weight due to illness, titled The Fat Pig Diet, knocked out an autobiography and appeared in TV adverts for insurance companies.
You went into the back of my new car!
Calm down, dear. It's a commercial.
There are very few media types I would like to have met, but Winner is one of them. This is very unlikely to happen now, though, as he's dead. Why would I like to have met him? Well, because I'm something of an unashamed and unapologetic Winner apologist. Growing up, I watched his movies of the 60s and 70s on TV and at the cinema and understood what he had achieved and realised that I really enjoyed his varied and pretty unique output. So I appreciated the man and a lot of his work. People forget, Winner was one of the prime pop cultural movers in the 60s who helped define that decade. He satirised the sexism and sexual politics of the times with The System and I'll Never Forget What's His Name, both featuring one of his favourite actors, Oliver Reed. The latter film was a scathing critique of the media and the attitudes and values inherent within it. The start is unforgettable. Oliver Reed, dressed in a business suit, smiles and walks the commuter-packed London streets on a sunny day with an axe over his shoulder while the intro credits roll. When he gets to his office, he goes medieval on his desk with the axe, smashing it to pieces. What a terrific way to open a movie. The Jokers with Reed and Michael Crawford was a hip heist flick in which two brothers, practical jokers, decide to steal the crown jewels for a laugh, as you do. Hannibal Brooks, again with Reed, was a surprisingly self-aware anti-war comedy about a British prisoner of war set to work in the Munich Zoo. He absconds with an elephant called Lucy to walk all the way to Switzerland. I know, sounds like a stupid idea for a movie, but it takes in plenty of action as it moves along and is pretty good fun. Following direction of a dramatic effort called The Games, based around the Olympics, he moved on to make two revisionist westerns in the States, Lawman, the subject of this video, and the flint-hard and gloriously unpleasant Chateau's Land, the first of several collaborations with Charles Bronson. Chateau's Land was ostensibly a revenge flick, but it was a later film with Bronson, the legendary Death Wish, that stamped out the template for the revenge cinema genre. There is a rough yet strangely elegant sleaziness to the look and feel of Death Wish that has since never been replicated quite as successfully. It's like a grindhouse flick on a decent budget, oft imitated and pretty much the starting point for a whole different type of movie. Death Wish was one of the most influential mainstream flicks ever made, whether you like it or not. Facts don't care about your feelings. Possibly Winner's most notable achievement and ironically the marker for his cinematic decline. It was clear that Winner was an artist of some original vision. In 1971 he made a sexually explicit prequel to Henry James' The Turning of the Screw called The Nightcomers with Marlon Brando. Quite a risky thing to do. What, make a film with Marlon Brando? Yeah, that is quite a risky thing to do, but quite a risky thing to do to make this film at all, considering that The Innocents, Jack Clayton's 1961 version of the James story, is considered one of the textbook examples of the psychological horror genre. Along with Robert Wise's The Haunting, it is a yardstick which few have measured up to or bettered. And yeah, The Nightcomers, radiating a weird tonal quality all its own, wasn't all that great, but it was unusual and a faintly queasy and uneasy example of out-on-a-limb filmmaking, depicting bondage, sexual sadism, and the corruption of children. And any film in which Stephanie Beacham gets her baps out has at least something of worth to offer. Add to all this The Mechanic and The Stonekiller and Scorpio, and it is undeniable that Winner made some compelling action movies that left their mark and have inspired the likes of Quentin Tarantino. So, to dismiss the man as a fatuous buffoon and his body of work as meaningless drivel is more than a little disingenuous on the part of the movie and media snobberazzi. They should know better, and if they don't, then I do. In the 60s, Italian director Sergio Leone and TV actor Clint Eastwood kicked off a seismic reboot of the traditional Western mythology with three films which came to be known collectively as the Dollar Trilogy. A Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly changed the Western landscape forever. Sure, previously the tougher-edge psychological Westerns of the 50s by the likes of Anthony Mann and Bud Botticher reshaped things into more complex perspectives, but ultimately held fast to certain traditional tropes. tropes. There was always a sense of fairness, of a code of honour, a level of decency, and always redemption. Leone's West was a dirty, violent, dangerous place in which the hero was less clearly defined, more mercenary, a borderline bad man with self-serving motives and fluid morality, a bounty killer, a killer of men, an avenging angel with a devil on his shoulder. Eastwood's Man with No Name, who usually had a variety of names attributed to him in the film, so Man with No Name is a bit of a misnomer, was a blueprint for what became known as the anti-hero. Whereas John Wayne would never shoot you in the back, Eastwood would be happy to shoot you in any angle of your body any which way from sundown. Then in 1969, with the release of Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, the traditional western truly bit the dust. Beautifully made, elegiac, stunningly shot, this hymn to the slow, painful death of a way of life was a game-changing event. Filmed using intricate multiple camera angles, fast-cut editing and slow motion, a revolutionary approach at the time, the detailed ballets of death and destruction punctuating the narrative were both beautiful and horrifying to behold. Bullets, explosions, ruined flesh, spurting gouts of blood, lovingly captured and lingered over. Furthermore, the cast, made up of familiar Western stalwarts from the traditional Hollywood offerings of the past, their characters, looks and behaviours almost unrecognisable in this more grounded and authentic stab at realism. William Holden, Robert Ryan, Ben Jonson, Warren Oates, Ernest Borgnine, Edmund O'Brien, Hollywood staples of many a horse opera, living and breathing in a redefined format that challenged the old order. Doesn't matter that Peckinpah was vilified in some quarters for the explicit violence, which his camera portrayed with an unflinching honesty. Doesn't matter that some traditionalists felt it to be no more than a gimmicky blip on the radar. Once it was out there was no going back. That was the truth of the matter, whether it could be handled or not. What the spaghetti western started, the Wild Bunch finished. Interestingly, in the top spot of the US box office in 1969 was another western, George Roy Hill's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Great flick, original in its own way, very tail end of the 60s with its two handsome, charismatic leads, upbeat score by Burt Bacharach, hit song about raindrops falling on some guy's cranium, vaudevillian motifs and poppy scat vocals, comic one-liners abound pleasingly, humorous set pieces permeate. It's all very lightweight and harmless stuff. The only message here is crime doesn't pay in the end. Butch and Sundance outlive their time like Pike and his gang in the Wild Bunch. We don't get to watch them die though, just like their love interest Etta Place, played by Catherine Ross, advises them she won't, which sort of spoiled it for me. The Wild Bunch was the 20th most popular film at the box office in the US that year. I wonder how Butch and Sundance would have fared if it had been released a year later. We'll never know. Lawman. Michael Winner worked with some big stars, Reed, Brando, Bronson, Mitchum, and here he gets to direct for the first time another larger-than-life Hollywood icon, Burt Lancaster. Lancaster was apparently considered for the Pike Bishop role in The Wild Bunch, which went in the end to William Holden. Winner would direct him once again in the spy thriller Scorpio. Lancaster is tailor-made for the lead role of US Marshal Jared Maddox, a man who looks like he's hewn from weathered marble, an almost immovable object. With ice-chipped blue eyes set like diamonds in a tanned and resolute face, you get the impression this is not a man you want to dick around with. That impression proves to be the right one. In the opening scene of the film, a bunch of rowdy cowpokes are riding around all pissed drunk in a small town called Bannock, firing off guns with wild abandon and setting things alight, having a good old time. Only one elderly gent is lying there in the street bloodied and dead, not having much fun at all. When Maddox rides into the town of Sabbath, he has a dead body with him. It's one of the 6 unruly cowpokes who apparently resisted arrest. Maddox has warrants for the other 5 who apparently live and work in and around Sabbath. Trouble is, the men all work for mega-rich local rancher Vince Bronson, played by Lee J. Cobb. Bronson has the local sheriff Cotton Ryan, played by Robert Ryan, who was coincidentally in the Wild Bunch, in his pocket. Cotton used to be good with a gun, but now he's a shadow of his former self, or washed up, a corrupt lackey. The wanted men don't want to be taken in for trial. Maddox is utterly resolute that the law is the law. An old man is dead and justice must be served. Bronson, in fairness, wants to avoid confrontation and violence and tries to bribe Maddox, and even offers financial compensation for the old guy's family. Maddox reasons that because of the accidental nature of the crime and a corrupt judicial system, the men will likely receive light sentences. But the law is the law and justice must be served. They have to be arrested and stand trial. So that's the setup. With neither side willing to give ground, the situation escalates into bloody gunfights, the tracking down of culprits, lost love found and found love lost, ending in sudden death and despair. The acting here is good across all the central players, but ultimately Lancaster dominates every scene he is in. His natural screen presence is used to magnetic effect. Maddox is a hard and unyielding character, a man with a life that is empty of comfort and affection. All he has is his concrete interpretation of the law that he has sworn to uphold in purely black and white terms. It is all he has to validate and sustain his existence. He knows that with progress breathing down everyone's necks, his days in this role are numbered. The theme of men in the process of outliving their time is once again present here. He also has few illusions, pointing out that a lawman is a killer of men. He is so fast and effective with a gun that those who go against him don't stand much of a chance. His willingness to kill in defense of the law makes him a virtually unstoppable force. It's a pleasingly grim little tale, framed by some sharp and bright cinematography from Robert Painter, who went on to lens Trading Places and The Little Shop of Horrors. Winner's direction is brisk and economical, and the pacing is pretty consistent throughout. Maddox is an intriguing character with some notable quirks. He plays a small flute to relax, which is pretty fucking odd, let's face it, but at least it's not an accordion. When he meets up again with old flame Laura, played by a careworn Cherie North, he does start to soften slightly, allowing himself glimmers of what life could have been like in the light of different decisions being made. With nearly all his friends and former colleagues being 6 foot under, he recognises that he is on borrowed time, as do Bronson and Cotton. All three are fast becoming men out of time. Laura is possibly a former prostitute, a good-time girl making do as a common-law wife to a mean-spirited dirt farmer, who also happens to be one of the wanted men. After sleeping with Maddox, she agrees to leave with him if he quits his lawman role. Now, critics have pointed out that after devoting nearly a whole film to Maddox being utterly unwavering and wholly motivated by his dogmatic adherence to doing his job, one shag is all it takes to cause him to decide to throw all that away and ride out with the chick. Therefore, this is counterintuitive in relation to the established narrative and developed characterization. But I see it differently. Up until the point where his relationship with Laura reignites, Maddox can see no alternative because he has no other choices outside of clinging to his code and his principles. Laura is another option, one he never had or entertained before. So, although it is handled in an abrupt manner and perhaps not as carefully or convincingly as it could have been, this sea change in Maddox is wholly understandable. Just as understandable is his reaction when Bronson and his men won't allow him to leave town without a fight. Frog and Scorpion time. Like the Scorpion, Maddox reverts to his old instincts in the end and kills without quarter or mercy those who stand in his way. His final shattering act of gunplay destroys any chance of a life with Laura he might have had. In the blink of an eye, he becomes the lawman once more, a killer of men, and that is what he remains. It's a tough and gritty little number, part old western, what with its Rio Bravo-like film sets and codes of honour and such like, and part neo-western with unrepentant violence, cold-blooded killing, and faint echoes of High Plains Drifter, minus the supernatural implications. I find there's a lot to like about it, and I rate it as one of Winner's best. If you've never seen it and you like westerns, why not give it a shot? There's every chance you won't be disappointed. And while you're at it, seek out Chateau's Land as well, which is a different kettle of fish altogether, a much harsher and more brutal excursion into terrorism and vengeance in the Old West. Thanks for your time and attention. If this video has given you something, even if it's something you didn't want, please feel free to punch like or even subscribe. Here's a song called Bandoleros. Yeehaw! One kills, one steals, listen deaf without me you're dead. One thinks, one feels, make a left for the canyon up ahead. The wagon wheels are turning, got them off at the pass, radiating skies as blue as bottled glass. Listen everyone, every mother's son, can you hear the Gatling gun, coughing death at compañeros? We will cut and run, and when our time is done, Kiss the desert sun for us lucky bandoleros. One tries, one gives, hold on Joe, together we're set. One dies, one lives, that was close but they haven't got us yet. The trading post is waiting with a campfire glow. Ladies of the night in a medicine show. Listen everyone, every mother's son, can you hear the Gatling gun, coughing death at compañeros? We will cut and run, and when our time is done, kiss the desert sun for us lucky bandoleros. Deal and a roulette wheel seems to always stop on red. If it's legend or truth, I know how I feel. I'd much prefer the legend instead. Listen everyone, every mother's son, can you hear the Gatling gun, coughing death at compañeros? We will cut and run, and when our time is done, kiss the desert sun for us lucky bandoleros. We've all had our fun, it's been a crazy run. Shots for everyone, bullet holes in our sombreros.